This is the second unit for Hire Business, and it's called the Management of Marketing. And we're going to, the first presentation here is about the role of marketing. So what marketing is all about, why organisations have a marketing department, and the different types of market research that organisations use. So our learning intentions then to understand the role of marketing in an organisation, to identify the difference between two terms, market and product-led products, to understand the different types of buying behaviours that consumers have, to examine market research methods and how they can improve the effectiveness of an organisation, and to understand the use of sampling to carry out market research. By the end of this, we're going to be aware of the role of marketing. We'll be able to distinguish between market v product-led products. We'll be able to discuss the different types of buying behaviour. We'll be able to distinguish between different market research methods and how they improve the effectiveness of an organisation, and understand the different types of sampling that we can use to carry out market research. So first and foremost then we ask, what is marketing? And the marketing department of an organisation is a really important one, because what they do is they try to anticipate, identify and fulfill customer needs. Now that's the easiest way of remembering that, is by anticipating, identifying and fulfilling customer needs. By anticipating, we want to get in there first as an organisation before competitors, so you want to try and anticipate what's coming up in the market, what people are going to want to buy. Then asking people what they would like to change in a product, so we can identify these needs and then obviously carry out the process of providing that product, fulfilling their need. Marketing is essential to reduce the risk of product or service failure. If you don't carry out market research, then you run the risk of your product not doing well in the market, or perhaps being a bit of a damp squib, if you like. It's about getting the right product or service to the customer at the right price, in the right place, at the right time. So the next little bit is really just what a market is. Now, a market is where buyers and sellers come together, and it's not just face-to-face. So it could be that you come together online through things like eBay, Amazon, you come together with an organisation like Boohoo or Debenhams or whatever online. Someone can actually make a phone call, or you can make a phone call to buy a product or service, phoning up a restaurant to book a table for a meal. It can be at a marketplace, a market stall. Any of these things could be a market, as long as buyers and sellers are coming together in some way to buy and sell products. These two terms are really important for what we're going to do further on in marketing, but organisations are obviously concerned about two things, and they're concerned about the market share that their business holds in the market for a product. Now, what we mean by market share is it's the percentage of sales held by one product or one organisation in relation to the whole market. So the most common one, and the one that's on the next slide here, are the different market shares of the different supermarkets in the UK. And it's a very, very up-to-date one. I'm just going to zoom on to that right now. And here it is here, and it was in May 2020. Now, what we can see here, and we're perfectly aware of that, I know the colours are not particularly clear for some of the greens here, but we can see that according to this, Tesco has 26.9% of the market just now. Now, what that means is, of all the shares in all these different supermarkets here on this graph, Tesco have 26.9% of these sales. If we look to the next one, which looks to me perhaps like, I'm thinking here maybe Sainsbury's, they've got 15% of all of the market share. So that's what market share is. That's really important for organisations to know. And as I say, we're going to be talking about this later on when we talk about the Boston Matrix. The second term that comes up in this Boston Matrix, and something that businesses would like to know, is market growth. How well is the market for the product growing? Has the market stagnated? Has it stopped because that product is no longer popular? Anybody who wants one of these products or services has already got it? Or does it mean that the market for that product is growing quickly? And that's what's important. It's the demand for a product or a service over a period of time. And that's, as I say, very important when we come to talk about the Boston Matrix. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at the types of products that organisations actually produce and sell. And these come under two different headings. They are market-led or product-led. Now, the difference, this question here, this slide here is just asking you a question just now and asking, can you think of any products that may have been put onto the market without the organisation carrying out market research? Now, we've already kind of mentioned that's a bit of a dodgy thing to do, because if businesses don't carry out market research, then they don't know if they're getting the product right. However, there are some products out there that haven't had any real market research attached to them, and that's what we call product-led, which we're going to look at in a minute. So there are a number of factors determining whether a product will be product-led or market-led, and this little list here tells us this. The products itself. If the product is innovative, if it's a new product that nobody's heard of before, and the person who has created the product thinks that it's of a really high quality and customers are going to like it, then you'll find that very little market research has been carried out for that product. We call that product-led. Another way for the product to be product or market-led is the quality. Does the company concentrate on the quality and safety of the product, or do they concentrate on increasing the market share? Clearly, if they're concentrating on the quality of the product, making it really, really good, spending all their money instead of carrying out market research into making the product really safe and really good and of a really high quality, then we call that product-led. If they are more concerned about getting a bigger share of the market, making their product better than any of the others in the market, finding out what the consumer finds missing in the competitors' products so they can add them, then that would be a market-led product. Another thing would be the internal decisions that the organisation makes. Research costs money. So if an organisation isn't prepared to carry out the market research, then they may find that it's not going to be a market-led product because they're not prepared to carry out market research because it's so costly to gather and actually compile and put together. The nature and size of the market is another thing. So more expensive products will be market-led because they'll want to make sure that they get them right first time. However, if they don't do that, then the competition are going to creep in before that. Another thing about this would be the fact that the company will want to make sure that the size of the market for a product would actually be quite small, because there's normally very little competition in a product-led market. And this is what this last point is talking about here. If there's little or no competition, you will tend to find the product is product-led. Famous examples of product-led products would be, for example, the Dyson vacuum cleaner. James Dyson carried out very, very little market research when he created the Dyson. He was more concerned about getting a quality product to the customer with increases in suction, being able to get into corners that other vacuum cleaners couldn't do, things like that. So it's more likely to be product-led if there's little competition for the product, because it's normally innovative, it's normally new onto the market. Market-led products then, these are just, this is quite a common distinguishing between market and product-led. So it's really important that you've got some points for market and you've got some points for product, so that you can actually do a really good distinguish of the two. The main points then about market-led or market-orientated, as you'll see from the heading, that's another way of putting this, market-orientated, is the customer's wants and needs are identified through market research. So heavy research is carried out for market research, for market-led products. Changes in social factors like trends, fashions, they can be identified and acted upon more easily. So you are very much looking at the market to see what's happening. So things like clothing, etc., where changes in fashions and trends are happening all the time, then organisations will have to carry out heavy market research to find out what's going on out there so that they can act upon them. So these are more likely to be market-led. Another thing about market-led products is that the challenges of your rivals will be better met. In other words, you can see what the rival is doing, you're researching the market, you can find out what the competition are up to, so it means then that you can actually, by carrying out the market research, you can keep up with them. Product-led, on the other hand, the product is produced because, as I've said to you, the organisation thinks they're good at providing it, or the product will be the best or the only version on the market. So much research has been going into making the quality of the product better rather than what the market wants. There's little or no market research carried out, as the needs and wants of the consumer are not of importance. And the reason we're saying that is because they think they have got a really good product. It's an innovative product and they don't have to carry out the research because they reckon that customers are going to buy it. And when the Dyson actually came onto the market, so many people changed their vacuum cleaner from Hoovers and Electrolux and all these other kinds to the Dyson vacuum cleaner because it was such a good quality product. And people were really impressed with the way that it hoovered your carpets or vacuumed your carpets rather than all the other versions out there. Another important point about product led is, of course, that the market may have absolutely no or little competition. So these are the features of a product led product. And finally, it's normally got a strong USP, and the USP is the unique selling point. And the Dyson had a couple of USPs. The fact that it could actually go into corners, it was bagless, which was something new for vacuum cleaners. They used to have a bag put inside them that had to be purchased so that you could gather all the dust and all the hair, etc. from your carpets. And that was one thing about the Dyson that it didn't have. It was a bagless, the first bagless vacuum cleaner. In fact, Hoover came out with a bagless vacuum cleaner as well, and Dyson had the patent for it, which means that no one else can use their idea for a number of years, depending on how long the patent has been bought for. And Hoover were actually taken to court by Dyson for this very reason, because they had copied a patented idea. So that's the product-led product. Now we're going to look at consumer behaviour, and this is how we look at how the thoughts of consumers and the actions they take when buying products or services. So there are a few things that we look at here for consumer behaviour. Why do customers buy products? Is it because they're basic? We're going to look at some of these examples in a second. Or is it because it's a sign of social status? There are basic needs people have to fulfil. We all have to fulfil. However, there are products that people will buy, designer clothing, bags, expensive cars, because people think it makes them, people have a better social status. How do customers buy products? How do they pay for them? Now, this is very much changed nowadays because people tended to use cash for small items, and they tended to use debit and credit cards for larger items. But now with contactless, people don't think twice about just zapping their card on the machine when they're buying something contactless for a small amount of money. So people are very, very different about that now. Where do they buy products? Do they go to shops? Do people tend to buy things online? Do they use catalogues? Do they use, TV sales, all that sort of thing? Personally, I tend to buy most of the things I buy online. I can't really be bothered with shopping, but some people really like shopping and they're quite happy to go to retail outlets and buy their products there. What type of products do they buy? We're going to look at this on the next slide now. And these are the different types of purchases that people have. So you've got your impulse purchases. When did you buy something on an impulse? That's what we're asking you here, and what made you do it? We've got routine purchases, what you buy regularly. Limited decision making, maybe taking a little bit of thought before you buy something. And extensive decision making, where it's really required a lot of thought, probably because it's an expensive item. And this slide goes into them in just a little bit more depth. So impulse buying, something without thinking, often in the spur of the moment. It might be you had absolutely no intentions of going out to buy a new pair of shoes, but here you found them in a sale and you decided that you were going to buy it. You weren't intending buying it, you bought it in impulse. Routine are things that you will buy regularly because you need them. They're maybe basics, or you just buy them out of habit. So things like food shopping, going and buying a loaf of bread or a packet of rolls or whatever. Limited decision making requires some thought. So it might be, for example, you see something you quite like, it's maybe a wee bit more expensive, so you walk away and maybe go back to it again. You've decided that yes, you're going to buy it. For the extensive decision making, these are much bigger purchases that require a lot of money. So it could be, for example, that it's something like a house or a new car where you really have to think about your finances, how you're going to, can you afford it, how you're going to pay for it. So that could take a lot more thought, and we call these extensive decision making ideas. Now, market segmentation was covered in National 5. We're very, very briefly going to talk about it here. And in class, of course, I will show you some videos on different types of market segmentation, and I'll give you a couple of examples just in a second. But market segmentation, if you remember back, those of you who did National 5, is a process dividing the market into different groups based on characteristics. So companies may want to aim their products at a target market, at a certain type of person, and the way they'll do that is they'll segment the market. So for example, based on age, holidays based on different age groups, Different ages of people are looking for different holidays. Gender, different genders are looking maybe for different clothes or different toys or whatever. Your income bracket, people with higher incomes may be looking for better quality, higher end products than those who are in lower income brackets. Tastes and fashions, everyone's got different tastes, different fashions, different lifestyles, healthy lifestyles. You maybe are not so much healthy, you like, you know, maybe being a bit of a couch potato and playing games on your Xbox or your PlayStation, all of these sorts of things. Social class was kind of covered under income. People with a higher social class have maybe got the status and they want to buy things for a status. And of course, different religions could also target segment products, for example, maybe types of food, etc., that people would buy. So there's just a little picture of your sort of family car versus a nice little sporty number there. Okay, that's how they would do that. Now the two videos are a couple of the videos that I would show you in class were on cosmetic products, personal hygiene products like razors, etc. And there's also one there talking about Lego and talking about how Lego has evolved from being predominantly a kind of boys stroke neutral toy to very much a catering for girls now with the nice bright girly pink and lilac colours and things. So these are the videos that you would have seen, and you'll find them online if you want to Google them to have a look at them. Now we're going to talk about market research, and we've already said that market-led products do require market research. Product-led products, no, not so much. But market research is where you're trying to find out what customers want and what's happening in the marketplace. And it involves looking at information that already exists. We call this secondary information, and finding out new information, and we call this primary information. Now, the purpose of market research is to let you know the size of the market and maybe how it's growing, to provide information where you would be best to try and sell your product, where consumers for that particular product are most likely to buy it. Helps you find out why some products are more successful than others and maybe how to make your own product more successful. It's there to help organisations avoid costly mistakes, producing and selling a product that customers perhaps don't want. Gives organisations ideas about how to promote or advertise products, and take some of the risk out of launching new products or redesigning products, because you've targeted, you've looked at the market, you've seen what people are looking for, so you're more likely to get it right, and allows you to decide on the target market that you're actually aiming your products at. Now, some examples of market research could be the types of customers, their purchases and their buying habits, how successful marketing and advertising campaigns are they cost effective? For some types of products, it may be there's a very, very, very strong contender in the market, and no matter what you do, no matter how much money you spend in marketing, it might be that you'll just never manage to be as good as that competitor, so it could be a bit of a waste of money. What changes need to be made to improve existing products? So that's something else you could be trying to find out. And maybe what customers would like to see in the future. For example, the PlayStation 3, what is it you would like to see in a PlayStation 4, so that Sony could actually act on that and introduce PlayStation 4 features that consumers are looking for, so that the product is more likely to sell. So the two methods of market research, we've talked about primary and secondary information. Field research is your primary information. This is carried out firsthand. You're creating this information through interviews, through online surveys, through telephone surveys, through questionnaires, through focus groups, etc. Desk research is your secondary information, and that's information that you'll maybe find from a published source. It could be something on the internet, it could be a consumer magazine, things like that would give you information. And this is actually a report on coffee makers, coffee roasters, that just looks something like this. Now this would be secondary information, because as a company, if this is something you're into, you could be looking at that information and deciding how to tweak or improve your product. Now, these methods of field research are detailed, very well detailed in your pupil notes. So I would like to make sure that you do study these very, very carefully, because we are not going over these in the slides. The advantages and disadvantages are given, and you have to make sure that you would be able to distinguish between the different methods of field research, because that could be a really good question, distinguishing between two types of field research. So telephone surveys, postal surveys, test marketing, where you actually give the product out for people to have a try. see what they think of it. Personal interviews, focus groups where you get groups of people together to talk about products and how they think they could be improved. Hall tests, are quite similar to kind of test marketing, where you're actually giving people products, they use them for a period of time, and then they report back on them. Electronic point of sale to see what kinds of things people are buying. Tesco do that through their club card. They can target customers with different types of discounts because they can see what they're buying on a regular basis. Consumer audits, just once again, just similar to EPOS, finding out what people tend to buy. Observations, it could be people standing in stores looking to see what people buy. And social networking sites, obviously, they are a good way of gathering information on what kinds of things that consumers are more likely to spend their money on. This next slide here gives just a video clip of test marketing and focus groups, just so that you can have a wee look at these to see how these things actually work. The advantages of field research are on this slide here, so and disadvantages, sorry. The advantages are that information can be tailored to suit the company's requirements. You can use the field research method that you feel suits you best. It should be up to date because you're finding it out for yourself there and then. The information should be complete because you're responsible for doing that, and it should be correct. Problems with it is it's really expensive to collect, as staff have to be employed to collate all the information and report back on what it actually means. It can be time consuming to collect, and you've got to rely on the fact that customers are honest, and they're maybe not always honest. They maybe just want to answer questions. So it's cheap to collect this information as the information already exists, and it saves the company time and money that can be spent on other things. They could actually spend their time adapting the product or the service to make it better. The problems with this type of desk research is that information could be biased. You could be looking at a report from a competitor, and clearly that is going to have some form of bias in it. It might not be totally fit for purpose. You may actually have to search through a lot of a large document, for example, to find bits of information that suit you, and you might have to tailor it to suit your requirements. There could be a bit of work involved there. I've mentioned the reading there. There's a lot of reading maybe to find the information that's suitable for your company. And remember as well, it's accessible to competitors, so everyone's actually got access to that information, so it doesn't make it special for you. Now, on the desk and field research, it would be quite unlikely that they would ask you a question on distinguishing between desk and field research. That's really a kind of National 5 question. However, what's really important to remember is that in your higher coursework assignment, there are 4 marks allocated to you talking about desk and field research that you use for your assignment. So for example, you could be using a company's website to find out about the different products they sell and services. That would be a piece of desk research that you would have to talk about there. It could be you decide to carry out a questionnaire or a survey to find out what a number of customers think about a company's marketing mix. Then that would be you carrying out field research. And what's really important there is you know about the different types of desk and field research and how valuable they are for your assignment. So that's the really important thing there. You have to be talking about their value, how good you found them. You might not have found them that good. It could be, you didn't find it very valuable because the information was also accessible to competitors or whatever. And these are the sorts of things that you have to be able to do. So you're using desk and field research for your assignment for that purpose. Getting it in an exam would be quite unusual. Distinguishing between 2 types of field research is more likely to be something that you could get. So on to the last couple of slides here, and sampling is something that's carried out by organisations because when they're carrying out field research, they can't possibly survey or interview everybody. So what they have to do is find a way of selecting samples of the population to do this. And this can be done in a number of ways. Now, for hire, we now only have to know about 2 different ways of doing this, and these are called random sampling and quota sampling. Now, random sampling is where people are pre-selected from a list, such as the telephone directory or an electoral roll, or there could be a database that's online or whatever, and what the company is doing is simply just picking at random from there. So there's no rhyme or reason as to why people have been picked. These people have to be interviewed once they're chosen. Now, the thing about random sampling is when you pick that person has to be chased up until they're actually interviewed. So if they're unavailable, the interviewer has to keep trying. Now, this becomes very, very difficult nowadays with people having mobile phones where you can block callers. But what you'll see is you'll normally find that the same number comes up on your phone daily if you don't answer it for a number of days. And that's no doubt a market research company looking for information from you. And what you can do now is block it. So clearly when the number's blocked, they can't pursue you anymore. But in real terms, in reality, they should be keeping going until they actually get you. It can lead to increases in costs because people are getting tied up chasing the same people all the time, and it could be very time consuming for them. The sample has to be large to be effective. You have to get a really good number of people in your random sample to be able to get an effective sample of different types of people. Quota sampling are people based on on the basis of characteristics they share. For example, it could be their age, their gender, their occupation. Now, the way that this normally happens is people who carry out the questionnaires or surveys are maybe asked to find so many people in a certain age bracket. So it could be males under 18, and then you've maybe got to find another 4 males between 20 and 35, or females over 70 or whatever. And this is how it normally happens. They're based on different types of people. You have to find people to fit into these categories. So if they've already found all their males under 18, then they can't ask any other males under 18. They've got to find someone in another category they've got. Now that can be quite time consuming. However, the one good thing about it is if you find a male under 18 and they can't answer the questions or they're not at home, then what you can do is find any other male under 18. So it's not quite as restrictive. So here we are here, you're maybe asked to find 10 males between 18 and 25. After that, no more individuals can be interviewed in this age group. It tends to be the cheapest form of sampling because you're not having to keep going back and pursuing the same person all the time. Now, the next slide here is just going to show you about market research, just to finish off. It's how poor research was carried out at Coca-Cola when Coca-Cola carried out a test marketing taste sample, and people said that it was a blind taste test, and people found that they preferred Pepsi to Coke, and this was in the late 90s. And what happened was it meant that Coca-Cola then decided it was time to change their flavours, to change the taste of Coca-Cola, and it didn't go very well for them. And the reason was because they didn't carry out their market research properly. But I'll let you hang fire and wait and see that. And here's just another video clip here on different types of market research that can be carried out.